Okay, good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council's Scrutiny and Overview Committee. My name is Councillor Graham Cohn and I am the chair of the committee. Along the top table with me to my right is Councillor Stephen Drew, my vice chair, and to my left is Ian Senior, who is the Scrutiny and Governance Advisor. I will introduce other attendees when I invite them to speak. This meeting is being live streamed. By your presence here in this chamber and via video conference, you are deemed to have consented to being filmed and to the use of the images and sound recordings for a webcast and archive recordings. When addressing the meeting, speakers should not disclose any personal information of any individual, as this might infringe the rights of that individual and breach the Data Protection Act. I can confirm that the meeting is quorate, there being at least 4 Scrutiny and Overview Committee members here in the chamber. If at any time a member leaves the chamber, would they please make that fact known to me so that it can be recorded in the minutes. Similarly, anyone joining us online but leaving before the end of the meeting should pop something in the meeting chat so that we are aware. Finally, a report of this meeting will be presented to Cabinet on the 27th of June, as neither the Vice Chair nor I are likely to be at the meeting. Is any other committee member willing to present the report? Lovely. Councillor Bradnam, thank you for...
I'm happy to report to Cabinet if you'd like me to.
Thank you for doing that. That's much appreciated. So, moving on to the agenda. First of all, we've got apologies for absence, so I'll go over to Ian for that.
Apologies then from Councillor Tom Bydott, Councillor Peter Fane and Councillor Aidan van der Weyer. And we've got Councillor Heather Williams as substitute for Councillor Bydott.
Okay. Any other apologies for absence or substitutions? No. Okay, so I'll go on to item 3, which is declarations of interest. Has anyone got any declarations of interest that they want to put forward on any of the items that are coming up on the agenda? Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to declare that I am a member of the Community Safety Partnership.
Anyone else? No? Okay. So we'll move on to the minutes of the previous meeting, of which we'll take as a whole. Has anyone got any comments or anything that they want to add to the minutes of the previous meeting? So we've got Sue Ellington online. Sue?
Thank you. I'm Sue Ellington, councillor for Swavesey Ward. I feel that the minutes do not reflect a question that I raised regarding whether the relationships with other councils in relation to the 4-day week were being explored and how other councils felt about it. I have spoken with Ian Senior, and I believe he has produced some words which I have agreed.
Okay, thank you, Sue. Have we got those words to display? Okay. Sue, can you read those and just make sure you're happy with the detail of that?
Would you like me to read them out?
No, I think that's fine. We can see them on the
Good.
screen.
I'm very happy with them. Yes, thank you. I'm sorry you can't see me, but I've got the split screen on so that I can see the paperwork.
Oh, that's no problem. We can see the amendments that you've made, and we did have a discussion about this in the pre-meet yesterday. So I'm happy with the amendments as put forward. So, Councillor Bill Handley.
Can I just ask, has Councillor Henry Batchelor seen and approved this amendment? Or not approved it, but has he seen them?
No, he hasn't, no. So I think in that instance, if we run it through the cabinet member as well.
I mean, I did take them off the recording.
Okay, yeah, so they've been taken off the recorded video at that point, so I think probably happy with that, but we will run the amendment past him at courtesy.
I think just for yeah.
Agreed.
I think that would be a good idea, yeah.
A fair point, yeah. Okay, has Councillor Anna Bradnam?
Just for a little light relief, members, in the minutes, collection changes, item 6, page 8, in the middle of the second paragraph, I read, their approach had involved establishing a baseline for the existing operations based on vehicle type, the nature and weight of materials collected, time travel, collection areas and destination. I thought, no, that's my mind running away with me. So no, the minutes are fine.
Yeah, okay, thanks very much for that. So is there any other amendments? Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Just that I wasn't present at the meeting, so I'll abstain from the vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Martin Khan.
I was also not present at the meeting, so I'd abstain from the vote.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so we'll move on to item 5, public questions. We don't have any, so we will move on. Yeah, so on the minutes, I affirm that we agree those minutes with those changes made. So happy with that. So no public questions. So we'll now move on to the substantial part of the agenda, which is item 6, South Cambridgeshire Community Safety Partnership, spanning from pages 11 to 30. Do we have any speakers on this? Councillor Bill Handley.
Yes, thanks. If I may, I'll just introduce a brief introduction to this, because this does fall under my portfolio. Just to draw attention, thank you, just to draw attention to the main points of the report. It's the CSP, as I'll call it, throughout. It's a statutory partnership operating under the Crime and Disorder Act, and made up of representatives from a number of agencies, includes the police, health, probation, fire and rescue, and so on. The idea is to help to reduce crime, disorder, substance misuse and reoffending, and also, very importantly, the gathering of data and the interpretation of data, which is a very important role. Although the work falls into my portfolio, as I've said, the council member representatives are Councillors Sally Ann Hart and Helen Leeming, who's here today. Now, and they, together with Catherine Hawkes and her team, have been the driving force behind our part of the partnership, if you like. If the committee asks really hard questions, I'll probably defer to Catherine or Linda, who are here today. So the council is a named responsible body and the accountable body for the CSP, and so it must have oversight of and be in agreement with the operational plan, hence its presentation to you this evening. The report details the work for the year 23-24 and including budgets, and it's for you and cabinet approval for your comments, for this committee's comments, and for cabinet approval. And if I could just finish with a brief comment, the council's now in 2 years of a 3-year arrangement with the Police and Crime Commissioner's Office, which provides funding for a CSP project officer, and it's Beth Watson. One of the post holders' roles is to listen to and work with the public to act on concerns and to give support.
And if I could just relay a very brief anecdote, because I've, on a couple of occasions recently, had to relay information about low-level antisocial behaviour to the team here, because residents have been in touch. You know, they've complained to the police on a 101, but they've had no response. So I've been pleasantly surprised to find, you know, a reaction. The police actually turned up a day or two after I raised it, and lo and behold, the problem seemed to stop quite quickly. Now, these are young, you know, they're teenagers, breaking glass, riding scooters at high level. It's small, low-level stuff. But the fact that a police officer turned up and just had a word seemed to have done the trick. So there is an example of this system working. The police didn't have the resources, but the CSP seemed to help to target their response. It's an excellent report, and I commend it to you for consideration and for approval for it to go to Cabinet. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that introduction, Councillor Handley. So I'll pass it over to members of the committee that want to speak on this. Councillor Rippeth.
Thank you. It's more just the comment that I thought this was really useful report, and it detailed quite a lot of the actions going forward, especially with a relatively new Police and Crime Commissioner. Also very thankful that there's going to be a deep dive in the ward that I represent, and as does Councillor Bradnam around this table. And it's quite good to see what's actually happening in the background and how the two work together. And the funding also for Beth Watson, I think, is really, really crucial. And thank you also to, obviously, the officers who work on this, put in a lot of hours, and to Councillor Leeming, Councillor Hart, who have kind of taken this by the scruff of the neck. And I think it looks, yeah, really promising. Thank you.
Councillor Handley, do you want to come back on that at all?
No, just to say thank you for the comments. Yeah, I agree with you. It's a really well-written report, and yeah, the deep dive is a good point, actually. That's something that can and will be done in places where it appears that the data shows there's a need.
Yeah, no, I think that should be really useful for drilling down. Thanks. So not a question, but more of a comment. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things I wondered whether we could add in, and that is whether we have learnings from other deep dives done before, as it were. So it's interesting because this is the outworking of the work that I see on the Police and Crime Panel, on which I sit on behalf of the county. And these priorities are also coming down from the Police and Crime Commissioner, of course. And I'm very glad to see his concerns about violence against women and all that sort of thing. So I'm pleased with that. But what I was just wondering is whether in the deep dive, whether we can actually just look back at some of the learnings we had about new communities when we had a task and finish group some years ago, as we were developing Northstowe, looking at the early development of community there and looking at antisocial behaviour and isolation there. And I just wondered whether we could include that in our thinking. I'm very glad to see Milton and Waterbeach get a deep dive. And also, I was interested to note, just skipping to a later paper in the agenda, Milton and Waterbeach is mentioned later on as on page 99 in our equality report. It's referred to having, looking at equality profile headlines, and it says, pockets of high fertility between 2016 and 2020 exist in places such as Milton and Waterbeach for females aged 15 to 44. And I wondered if that's got anything to do with, you know, the antisocial behaviour that we're maybe experiencing and that's contributing here. So maybe it's, you know, women becoming pregnant younger and having less resources available to them. So anyway, but yes, It's just, can we have any learnings from other earlier task and finish groups that we can learn from?
Councillor Bill Handley.
Well, it's certainly something that I would be happy to see in there, but of course I don't have to write the report. I don't know if Catherine would like to comment. I mean, this is, you know, this report is for 23-24. Whether it's relevant to have that in this particular report, what you are asking for in this particular report, I'm not sure. Maybe Catherine could give a bit of advice on that.
Thank you. Yes, normally a deep dive would look at the data that's available in terms of crime and antisocial behaviour. So look at police data, fire data, health, admissions to A&E, violence against the person, public order, that sort of thing. But we can certainly ask the Cambridgeshire research team if they are able to look at any other papers that are relevant in terms of new communities. But what we're looking at here is the data that's been presented thus far, and doing a deep dive into that. It might well be that they need to bring those other sort of areas in for future planning and the sort of the designing out of crime for, if I've understood you correctly, for the new emerging community.
That's right.
So
It
the
was
two are
actually
slightly different, but we can signpost them and ask them.
It was actually a piece of work done for Scrutiny and Overview some years ago when North Stowe was just being planned, and it looked at that very early occupation and the trying to anticipate and avoid any problems with isolation and the antisocial behaviour that could happen in a new community with little oversight, as it were.
Thank you. So I think that's something that we could look at perhaps as a slightly separate exercise, but certainly we can do that, yes. And we can also, just to take your other point, we can perhaps ask them to have a look at the sort of the qualities related data that you've highlighted and see whether there's anything going on there.
Just to follow, I think it's the 29th, the cabinet this is due to go to the cabinet on the 29th of this month, so a little bit tight for doing too many amendments to this, and I'm not sure that they're that vital, frankly. So if you can do what you've suggested and produce a separate report for our perusal, I think that's the best way to do it.
The deep dive is something that's planned in for this summer and is going to be done in the next few months. So, and it's the deep dive that's mentioned in the plan, in the paper, so it doesn't change the report that we have as it stands. We can add that into the work as it evolves.
All I'm suggesting is that there is data that they might find useful to look at in that deep dive.
Okay, so happy with that. Richard Stobart.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So it's just on this question of data that I wanted to ask some questions. So it's obviously strongly implied, and Catherine has just listed as the kind of data that might emerge, for example, from the deep dive. But is there behind this a kind of a systematic approach to data, but not just data points, but also trends? So I have to say that the whole initiative, community safety initiative, being interdisciplinary, is excellent, and it allows the opportunity to bring together multiple sources. But are there, in a sense, tighter definitions of data that would be associated with the plan? I do have a second question, but let me just pose that one for the moment.
Councillor Hanley.
I'm going to have to defer on that one, I'm afraid, to Catherine. Sorry, Catherine.
That's okay, thank you. I think I can't go through it now with you, but each year the CSP commissions from the same research group a strategic assessment which tells us what areas of crime and or antisocial behaviour we need to be looking at, and it's got graphs and trends in it, so it's possibly more helpful for me to share that with you. And that talks about all sorts of different areas, from acquisitive crime, trends over time, gender differences, and all sorts of things that are going on in South Cambridgeshire. So, yeah, I can share that with whoever would like to have a read.
Chairman, may I ask through you, and that data is just generally available to anybody who's interested, you know, perhaps in association with a project or a task and finish group that might be delving into something. We can look at that data.
Yes, these reports are done annually, and they're published on the Cambridgeshire Research website. Once they're okayed and approved and agreed, then they can go. And those are then, they form the basis of the quarterly reviews of the data. So they're not just done once and then left. We look at them quarterly to make sure that everything we're doing is still in line with the original recommendations that were made.
So does each successive set of data then is it inspected by the Community Safety Partnership for trends, for outliers, for all of those kind of things that you might get from a set of data?
Yes, the quarterly reports. There's currently a monthly tasking and coordination group, which is made up of members of all of those different responsible authorities that Councillor Handley outlined, and they look at those quarterly reviews to understand whether things have changed. For example, it was quite clear halfway through last year that Milton and Waterbeach was moving back into the list of priority areas for us to look at as a partnership, which is why it's now very definitely on the list of priority areas for us. So that came out of one of those reviews.
Chair, thank you. But I do have just one associated question, which is around setting of expectations and targets.
Okay.
So,
do you want to take that now?
If I could.
Yeah,
yes,
please. Yeah.
In the, I mean, the report is excellent in setting out the list of activities, but what is in a sense, the expectation? I mean, the data is published, and the Community Safety Partnership digs into that data and its implications, but what would be sensible as targets for this activity, apart from, yes, we've done the work, and yes, we've published the data? Is there anything beyond that that we might regard as a goal or a target for this activity?
Okay, so I'll come to Councillor Bill Handley in the first instance. Can I just remind members just to speak up a little bit, speak clearly, so we can all hear?
Chair, I missed the beginning of what the councillor was saying, but I think it's one of those that I'm going to have to defer to Catherine.
Okay, yeah, Catherine?
In terms of targets, forgive me if I don't answer your question, I'll try again, but we have, the plan has statutory tasks within it, things like domestic homicide reviews that we must undertake, and then a range of project work that we can undertake that's, if you like, optional, but it's very much led by the data. So, for example, the deep dive into Milton and Waterbeach is something that we would do because the data tells us that, but that's not statutory. So what we are trying to do is make sure that in each of the 4 priority areas we have stakeholder groups that come together and talk about what's going on there and why and what can be done about it. We also have public meetings, and we've got renewed commitment from police and other partners to hold those in communities on an ongoing basis. In terms of targets, we just try and work on this on an ongoing basis, really, and be responsive to whatever's going on in those communities. Beth, for example, has worked on things like speed watch and hate crime and antisocial behaviour, antisocial parking, commissioning detached youth work to address particular issues in different communities. So that's an integral part of her role. But in terms of targets, other than those that are set on the statutory basis, it's quite difficult to aim for something we're led by the data.
Do you have a follow-up, Councillor Stobart?
No, that's fine. That's a good answer. So through you, Chair, thanks to Catherine for the replies. Yeah.
Councillor Sue Ellington?
Thank you. On page 25 of the report, it mentions that a mental health officer has been appointed, and it refers to them helping with hoarders. But there are a number of other issues within antisocial behaviour and so on where a mental health officer might be used. And I just wondered, I wasn't aware this person had been appointed, and I'd really like to know the scope of their job description.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yeah, can I defer that again to Catherine, please?
Catherine.
Thank you. Yes, we do have an officer principally based in housing, looking at mental health across our tenants and the issues that they're facing there. And that's broader than hoarding, but specifically with regard to the issues that we've had coming to our problem-solving group for the CSP, which is the Community Safety Partnership, we've had a high number of hoarding cases that have been brought to our attention through the fire service, because of course there was a risk and a fire hazard, a risk to life because of that. So in terms of the CSP work, we reference that officer because they are going to be and are going to continue working on those particular cases that have been brought to our PSG. I can share with you a job description if you need that.
Okay, Sue, do you want to follow up on that?
I would be ever so interested, Catherine, if you just, because it seemed something that we really ought to have been working for many years, and I'd love to see how it's working out in practice.
Sure, thank you. We can do that.
Thank you.
We can do a member update on the sorts of things that he's working on and the sorts of issues he's coming across, that sort of thing.
Thank
Lovely.
you for that.
Can I ask one other question? And that is about rural crime, things like hair coursing. I have a number of my farming residents who seem to spend their spring days watching out the window to see whether their crops are being run on by hair coursers and so on. And I know there was some specialist work being done to target this.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yeah, Catherine's offering to answer again.
Catherine.
Yes, so we still have the Rural Community Action Team, RCAT, working within the police. They don't work just in South Cambridgeshire, they work county-wide. Obviously, they wouldn't stop at a district border if there were hair coursing happening or anything like that. They would travel over and continue their pursuit. So they come to our board, which happens twice a year, and they talk to us about their work and the sorts of cases they're dealing with, not just hair coursing, but rural crime generally. And they sent a report to the last meeting as well. So the next one will be in October, but those are available for us to share as well. So we can make those available. They're part of the pack of papers that go to the CSP.
I think, again, that would be useful because some of my farming colleagues like to know what's going on across the county.
Okay, we'll note that. Lovely. Thank you. So we've got Councillor Heather Williams next. Councillor Braddon, did you want to come in on that point? Or?
It was just an additional information on what Catherine Hawkes has said.
Okay, go ahead.
Would that be okay? It's just that I know through the Police and Crime Panel that the Rural Crime Action Team has been very active, and they've taken a much more robust approach to enforcement, which has helped. And there are now areas in Cambridgeshire where certain people have been, I can't remember what the proper technical police term is for it, but they're banned from being there. So if they were found again, they would have vehicles impounded. So they've taken a much more robust approach to that, and I think that's helped to quite a considerable degree in the part of the county that I'm in. It depends where else they've gone, but I know that they've been much more robust in enforcement.
Thank you for that, Councillor Braddon. It's very useful. Heather Williams. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of things. I'll start on the comments from Councillor Ellington. Obviously, one thing as well with the RCAT team is because there are parts of my ward that you actually have to go into another county to get to, so they can at least move around. What I don't think is necessarily aware, and I'm thinking along the lines of page 26 and 28, the communication plan, when I reference this, is that because there has been changes in the legislation and there has been changes to what you can report and not. So you can report suspected hair coursing, like people going, so if you were to see a vehicle likely for hair coursing with dogs and equipment, you don't have to wait to report until they're actually in the field now. But I don't know if everybody is aware of that, so I don't know if something through the awareness campaign just about rural crime and being more vigilant, particularly through the summer, people are walking around more, they're walking around barns more. And there is a huge issue in that a lot of farming equipment, the components were made in Ukraine. So even if you have it stolen, even if your insurance is going to pay, you still have the problem because you can't actually get new equipment in at the moment. So there is perhaps something that could be worked into the communication plan around rural crime. And it can just be, so in my village, it happened to my in-laws, there was just a raid of outbuildings. That was organised. There was 24, I think, done in a night. So there could be some advice for residents about, what sort of, you can actually have alarms and that sort of thing. So I think that's something that potentially is missing from that list of the comms plan. And also that on page 26, at the bottom, it includes county lines for information social media campaigns. But when we look at the communication forward plan, I'm not clear where that sits in the comms plan. So if we could have some clarification around that, please, Chair.
Councillor Bill Handley.
I can't offer any, Catherine again, please.
Yeah, sorry, we can make it clearer, but where it talks about exploitation, that's the main issue with the county lines that we want to try to raise awareness of, because the one of the biggest issues, and we've had quite a number in South Cambridgeshire of late, is the issue of exploitation of young people as county lines become more prolific.
Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. Obviously, a big component of county lines is the drugs element of county lines. We do have in this district issues with drug-related, drug-fueled behaviour. I do think that that is something that would be important for us to be part of a support on. I understand the exploitation often actually comes because of people that are users, but equally, I think there is a big piece of work. It's sad, but it will be in pretty much every single village of our district. And people are noticing it more since COVID. But often residents don't know where to go. So I think this potentially that's missing and fallen through the gaps here.
Catherine, do you want to add anything on that?
Just to say yes, that these are not completely, but most of these are areas where we will lead for the CSP on the comms, and there is a substance misuse board, delivery board, that we use to deliver the statutory expectations of the CSP, and when they produce their comms, that's what we would take and then use and disseminate. So this comms plan, it won't just be limited to this. This is what will lead on for the CSP, but we can make sure that that's included.
Okay. Councillor Dr. Martin Khan.
Thank you very much. I just really wanted to comment about we've had good response from CSP in Orchard Park, which was in my ward. Mainly my fellow councillor, Councillor Hantraj, that has actually been dealing with this, but she's commented how helpful it has been. And they're now looking, I believe, at the possible spreading from Orchard Park into Hitham and Impington of problems. And it's useful to be able to target and identify and look at the background. It's been helpful, the coordination element.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Noted, and pleased to hear it.
Lovely. Councillor Helen Lehman.
Thank you, Chair. So first of all, I've been on the Community Safety Partnership for a year, and I would like to thank all my sort of fellow partners and representatives and the officers for a great year of work. So thank you. But I'm sort of looking through the report, and it's a great report of what's happening. I just think that there's a few technical phrases that are quite specific to the work of the Community Safety Partnership. So things like the community trigger and the PSG, the problem solving group. And I think they have quite a specific meaning that's not clear in this report. So I just wondered if there could be like a little glossary, just a bit of, a few extra paragraphs in here so that other members and also the wider community who would like to know about this work that's happening in the background, they may not be aware that's actually taking place. I think it's a really good opportunity for us to explain what exactly happens under the umbrella of the Community Safety Partnership, because I don't think people are always aware of that as an option to help in their ward, or as a resident, that's actually happening behind the scenes. I think it could be quite useful if those things were explained. Thank you. Councillor
Bill Handley.
Well noted. The glossary idea sounds a very good idea to me. Someone who isn't actually on the CSP would help me too.
Lovely. Do you have a follow-up at all? No. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. Just while we're thinking about antisocial behaviour, I just wanted to let members of the committee know the Police and Crime Commissioner attended Waterbeach Community Forum, which is arranged by South Cambs, last night in Waterbeach. And one of the things that came up out of that was we were talking about antisocial behaviour, and he said a group of police and crime commissioners have gone to the government and required there to be a change in legislation around nitrous oxide, the little silver canisters that are technically used for firing up aerosol cream dispensers, but are used to give people a temporary high. But there is a risk because people often do that at the same time as they're driving. And so, in fact, that is just to let people know that that's actually shortly to become illegal, the use of these nitrous oxide canisters. And also, of course, often when they can't get those online, they get the larger canisters, which are really sizable, and there's a risk to health from those as well. So just to let people know. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Did you want to comment on that at all, Bill?
No, thank you. I'll take that as read.
Lovely. Thanks very much. Is there any more speakers? Yeah, Councillor Stephen Drew.
Thank you. I wanted to reference stuff that's on page 15.18 and then page 16.19. There's a specific reference made to point 18, existing and allocated £15,000 per annum South Cambs District Council budget. And then there is also reference on the next page, point 19, about South Cambs District Council in year 2 of a 3-year agreement with the Office of the Police and Crime Commissioner, which provides £45,000 per annum CSP project officer. I just wondered, from the perspective of Cabinet leading on this, what thought had been given to the fact that we're obviously operating at a time of very high inflation. So therefore the cost of doing everything has significantly increased. And I know that at different committees across the council, there has been conversations about the extra building costs, for instance, in relation to Northstowe and other such matters. I just wonder whether or not any conversations have been had regarding making sure that the funding that was put in place previously for this remains an adequate level of funding when, through both pay rises for staff and for the ongoing costs of all services provided, there's obviously been quite a significant increase in the costs that are accrued for these projects.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yes, luckily I've got John Williams next to me, Councillor Williams, who is the finance lead member. He tells me that these kind of things will be taken care of within the budget structure, so that should not be a problem.
Great, thank you very much. That was my question.
Okay. Have we got any other speakers at all?
I do not have anyone else down.
Lovely, okay. In that case, if I draw members' attention to page 11 and the recommendation, which is item 2 there, and are the committee happy for this document to go forward to Cabinet with the things that we've suggested and commented on noted.
Agreed.
Agreed? Lovely. Okay. So we'll now move on to item 7, which is the quarter 4 performance report. And I think Jeff Membry wanted to speak briefly on this.
Thank you, Chair. Through you, with your permission, I just wanted to highlight the mystery shopper exercise that's been included within your pack for this quarter. Members might remember that just over a year ago now, at Scrutiny, after we introduced the golden number and made changes to the telephony service, members of this committee wanted us to find a way of ensuring that the customer was receiving a good quality service from us. So what we did was commission a company that's worked with some other local authorities, because this sort of exercise isn't routinely undertaken by other authorities, to undertake a mystery shopper exercise. This happened at the end of March and the beginning of April, which is our busiest times, to ensure that the results that we got were representative. I think members can see for themselves how we did, and I think that there was a pretty creditable performance. I thought it was just worth talking about the net promoter score that's shown in the pack, because this is something that's slightly unusual. Members might have experienced for themselves that when you've gone onto a council's website or spoken to people on the phone or bought a service, often you're asked to say whether you would recommend that service, that organisation, that firm to friends and colleagues. What happened here was, after the telephone call was completed, the person undertaking the call was asked that question, and if they scored us out of 10. If they scored us 6 or less, that was taken as a negative score. If they scored us 7 and 8, that was considered to be passive, and if they scored us 9 or 10, that was considered to be actively promoting the council. That gives a result that goes between -100 and +100. South Cambridgeshire District Council scored +43, which is lower than we'd like. Our aspiration is to be the same as some of the big commercial companies that score sort of 60 plus. But the local authorities that we're benchmarking against, the average score for those was -36. So I think that shows the quality of the service that we're providing, that if those people were residents of South Cambs rather than somebody employed by a company, they would be promoting the council to their friends and family. So I thought that was worth highlighting. Thank you for the opportunity to highlight that, Chair.
Thank you for that, Jeff. So now we'll open it up for questions, and just to remind members that this is on the whole of item 7, spanning from pages 31 to 78. So who would like to go first on this? Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. So one of the things I understand is, well, on the performance indicator report, that's pages 37 onwards, I noticed that the little graphs that we get no longer have an x-axis, and it just says 3-year trend. Now, I understand that perhaps the reason that has been put in instead of the years was because some people found, and I'm not saying it was necessarily this committee, but some people who received this report found the graphs perhaps a bit densely packed with information. And so it's been simplified by doing this. But I think that loses rather a lot of detail. And so I would ask if we could find a compromise position between no data at all and something that makes it confusing to read. So I would suggest it would be helpful if we could just have at least maybe the January of each year marked, so that we could see where we are in the administrative year. Because obviously a lot of these scores go up and down with the administrative year. I mean, classic one is the number of people trying to contact the contact centre immediately after you've issued a council tax bill. So it would be useful, please, could you return to these graphs, something which is an indicator of the time of year on the graph. So that's one thing, and I'm just pointing that up on page 37. Another one is, I know Jeff has given us some, on page 45, this is the average call answer time at CC 307, and we're given an explanation about why that's amber, because of course we're concerned that we're continuing to give a good quality service to our residents, and what I notice is that that January, February, March figure has actually increased in the time taken to answer calls, and that's why it's in amber. And the explanation given is it was done deliberately at a quite a busy time of year, and it was compared with last year and it was considered to be better. But I just wanted to be sure that we were going to try and work down from that. Obviously we would, but maybe we could have some narrative around that. I'll stop there for the moment.
Yeah, we'll take those two, I think. So I'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance. I can see Phil Bird wants to come in, but if I come to Councillor Williams, John Williams first.
Thank you, Chair. Could I point the councillor in the direction of the comment? Because if you read the comment, you will see why in March the figure was particularly high, and that if you take out
sorry, John, are you talking about the comment for 307?
307.
Yeah, okay.
Yes. So if you take out those additional calls, then actually the number of calls taken basically the same as the previous year. There's not a lot of difference. So, we have to accept that this particular year, March, financial year just gone, but in this particular March, we did receive some additional calls because of things like the mistake that the county council made over, which actually in the end we were able to correct before our bills went out. But nevertheless, there were people concerned about that. So you always get a higher number of calls, obviously, in the last month of the fourth quarter, because that's when people's bills start landing on their doormats for the next financial year. But nevertheless, I think it's the comment, I think, provides an explanation for that. And I think I would suggest, would say, overall, I think we should refer back to what the Bennett Institute said about our performance in that last quarter of last financial year. They could see no definite worsening of our performance in that last quarter. It's very similar to the fourth quarter of the previous year. And I think we should, if you look at the trends and if you read the comments, that's borne out.
Thank you for that, Councillor Williams. Phil Bird, did you want to add anything to that? You've indicated to speak.
Thank you, Chair. And I wanted to address Councillor Bradman's first comment about the graphs. So unless there's any more on the contact centre.
Feel free to address that now. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So yes, we did make some changes to the graphs following feedback that we got from Cabinet. They wanted the graphs to be made a bit more straightforward and easier to read. I fully understand that they want to see a high level of data and Scrutiny probably wants to see a bit more of the detail. So it's a bit difficult for officers to find the balance, but I'm happy to take on any feedback and comments that you have today. And what I propose to do is come back with some options of how we display that information in the future, if that would be agreeable.
Thank you very much for that. Councillor Bradman, did you want to come back?
That would be helpful. I think just an indication of the years, the beginning of each new year, so that we can see where they are in the movement of the data. That would be helpful. Thank you.
Thank you for putting those options forward to us. Councillor Bradman, did you have anything else you wanted to know? Okay. Councillor Helen Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a series of questions about the mystery shopper, please. So I wondered whether we could understand what was the prompt for doing this exercise, why we were benchmarked against Hertfordshire in particular, how much did this piece of work cost, who undertook this work, who is the research the research body that undertook this, and how are they chosen? And is this exercise that we can see in the report, is it a one-off, or will there be subsequent visits of doing the same exercise, please? I know I think that's 5 questions actually, but it would be great to understand the background to this, please.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance, and then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'll leave it to Jeff to go into the details, but this study was undertaken as part of the 4-day week trial.
Jeff Membry?
Yes, indeed it gives valuable information about the 4-day week trial. The actual prompt, though, was initially questions at this committee, as I say, about a year ago after we introduced the golden number. Members were commenting about the fact that the figures were looking very positive in terms of our performance, but wanted some reassurance that we'll be providing a good quality service and something independent rather than just what officers reporting on the KPIs. So as a result of that, officers went away and undertook this exercise. The reason, as I said sort of initially, this sort of exercise is not routinely undertaken by local authorities. So when we went out, we were looking for an organisation that had worked with other local authorities so that we had a valid comparison. This company had worked with 11 different local authorities in Hertfordshire, which was the biggest comparator that we could get. And it was a wide range of local authorities. So although it did include the county council, it also included primarily district and borough councils. So what we were able to do was to have very close comparisons on the sort of scenarios that they were testing, and to ensure that the information that we were getting was as valid as possible. The company was called Insight 6, and they've undertaken this work with, as I say, a number of other local authorities, 11. For us, this was the first time that we've undertaken this exercise. For the authorities that were compared to, actually, it wasn't the first time. They were part of a process where they'd undertaken this before. They put in an action plan, they'd made changes, and then they'd had another survey. So actually, that actually puts us, I think, in an even more creditable light. That we're talking about our base survey against the comparison with other local authorities that have already put in place an improvement plan. The cost was around £8,000. I can't remember the exact details of that, Councillor Leeming. I'll get the exact figure and send it to you after this meeting. But what we expect is it to be able to enable us to continue to deliver the service that our residents expect, and that members, particularly members of this committee, every time I attend, remind me of the importance of ensuring that our contact centre, which is our council shop window on the world, as it were, is providing the service that our residents need and expect. So we will be seeing some benefits come out of this. I think you'll see that there are a couple of areas where we can do more work on adding value and personalising the calls that we get from members. So I think that it was money well spent.
Okay, Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Chair. The one question that I have remaining is this a one-off exercise, or will it be repeated again at a future date, please?
Jeff Membry.
Yes, sorry, Councillor Leeming, I didn't answer that. The intention was to undertake this again in future after we've implemented an action plan. We don't have a date for that yet. I have to be candid and say although it was really positive to see what good results that we got. Until we had the results in, we didn't know how much of an urgency there would be to undertake this review again, which is why we've not had a particular date in place. I think most of the work that we need to do now is quite nuanced around training and development, so I suspect it will be more than a year before we undertake this survey again, but I'll be interested to hear members' views on that.
Councillor Leeming.
Thank you, Mr Membry, and that's a really helpful and detailed answer. I think that's it from me. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you. Just following on from those points, Chair, when you've found the costings, I think it would be good to have that circulated to all members and perhaps a written note of a follow-up in the minutes, or, so that everyone can see the costings that are associated to this. In relation to the mystery shopper, obviously the contact centre did very, very well, but I am acutely aware that those sorts of processes can actually put officers under more pressure. Even though they're doing a good job, you know that there's somebody sort of watching you, scrutinising you, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, but I'm just wondering what support was put in place for officers during that period. The other question I have relates to page 33 and 34. We can see that quite a bit at the moment is in the amber rather than green, and it's not in a particular area. It's a little bit more in green to the core, but it is in each area. And I'm just wondering if there's a common factor as to why we're in the amber and a bit delayed, or whether it's just individual issues. A bit of context on that, please, Chair.
Can we just ask, through you, Chair, can we just ask Councillor Williams which targets you were referring to? Because I can't see anything on page... Is it 33, 34, the report?
I'm referring to the graphs, page 33 and 34, the graphs.
Ah, okay, sorry, yeah, thank you.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance. No problem.
Well, if you refer to the business plan progress report, you'll see that most of the ambers come about because there have been changes in the timescales for some of the things that we, particularly Northstowe and Waterbeach Depot, and we've had to adjust the timetable. So as amber, as it says, amber is where we've had to change the end date to match changes in circumstances, but it will still be completed. There's no issue about completing that particular piece of work, but it's just going to be put back because of changes in circumstances have meant that we've not able to deliver when we assumed we were going to be delivering. So in particular, for example, I think there are a number of things in Northstowe, for example, the community centre, where we've had to change the delivery date for that project because of changing circumstances. So it's amber because it will be completed, but it will be completed later than we expected.
Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I do understand what the amber means, that it's got a new delivery date. With the exception of Northstowe, my question is, why have we had to extend so many delivery dates? We've got Northstowe as an example, but there's far more than that. And the fact that there is such little green and more amber, is there an overarching reason why we've had to have such revised delivery dates? Or if not, can we have a case-by-case breakdown as to a reason why?
Councillor John Williams.
Well, the explanation is given in the report. It's given in the table. The explanation as to why those particular items are amber and not green is given in the report. But I would also say that the vast majority of projects are actually purple, i.e. they've been completed. So, you know, I think we should recognise that the majority of the business plan has actually been delivered. That there are certain items that we're not able to deliver on time because of other circumstances, and the reasons for that are given in the report.
I'm just going to
let me find something other than Northstowe, and I can use that as an example. Bear with me.
John, whilst you're looking for that, are you happy for us to bring in Phil Bird?
Yes, certainly.
Yeah. Phil, do you want to come in there? And then I'll come back to Councillor Heather Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'd just like to pick up on Councillor Williams' question around support for staff. The contact centre staff were aware that the mystery shopper exercise was taking place. They weren't informed of what questions were going to be asked, but they were aware of when it was happening. We did explain to them, we had a meeting and everything beforehand to explain that it was very much like an audit, if you like, a critical friend rather than an attempt to catch them out and that kind of thing. We also had one of our senior contact centre members of staff acting as a champion, as a go-to person. So if anybody felt they had any issues or problems or concerns about the exercise as a whole or any particular call, that they could take it to them in the first instance. So we tried to provide as much support as possible during the exercise, and also just to say, based on the results, although as Jeff alluded to earlier, there is certainly some room for improvement. We think that overall the results are more than satisfactory. So we're having a sort of a celebratory lunch with the contact centre staff to show them how much we appreciate the work they've done and the performances they put in.
Okay, I'll come back to Councillor John Williams in the first instance and then back to...
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, for example, just come across the first one, A3, which is deliver support for startups and small businesses. And the action for that is provide a new space for growing small businesses or shared workspace for startups or micro businesses. And the comment is, amber, it's amber, as we continue to work towards providing a new space for small businesses or shared workspaces at our South Council premises. And we all know that because we are in the process of doing that. But it's later than we expected, which is why it's not green. But it's down to be done, which is why it's amber and not red. If we weren't going ahead and we couldn't do it, it would then be red. But as you see from the RAG for this particular, for the business plan, you'll see that amber means just basically things have been delayed. For example, let's look at another one. Promote South Cambs as a vibrant, attractive and commercially welcoming place. The page 64. The action is 500 additional jobs created on enterprise zones by the end of 2024-25 financial year. Economic and the reason it's amber is because the economic and legal due diligence is being undertaken with external consultants on delivery routes for the enterprise zone. Due to the scale and cost of bringing forward the development, coupled with the lack of internal expertise to deliver a commercial event of this scale, it is unlikely to be completed by the end of 24-25 financial year. So that's why it's amber and it's not green. So the explanation is there, why they are amber and not green.
Okay, do you want to come back on that at all, Councillor Heather Williams?
Yes, because if you look just below there, it says and this is my issue, is the explanations. Amber, because planning application was not submitted by end of Q4. Now, that is the criteria of why it's become delayed, but why? Why was the application not submitted by the end of Q4? Why did we not have the expertise in place to do things in Northstowe? There are reasons for delays, but we're not really seeing why these are coming about or how they're likely to be resolved.
Councillor John Williams.
Can I suggest Anne to come in here and explain this particular issue?
Okay.
If you're happy for me to come in
Yes,
at this point, Chair. Thank you. So just to say, with regards to Northstowe, more than happy to look at the narrative that we put into the business plan update and to think about how we can better explain things, and we can take that away. With regards to quite a lot of the actions that are amber on Northstowe, you'll see that they're all related. So, for example, the action we were just talking about with the planning application, that also relates to the action just above it as well. So they are interconnected in that sense, and that's why you see quite a few of them as amber. With regards to the enterprise zone and the local centre at Northstowe, there is quite a lot of work going on in the background, but as Councillor Williams was saying, we're not at the point that we expected to be when this business plan was created at the start of the business plan year. So that's why they're amber. It's not that the work isn't happening and going on in the background. It is, it's just taken a bit longer. And there's a couple of reasons for that. One is that we've been focusing, as members will know, on the community buildings at Northstowe over the last year. And as the plan outlines, we are quite close to opening a new temporary community building and also to the first pavilion. We're also working on the permanent community building as well, and looking forward to putting a planning application in for that over the summer. And it's simply a case that, to be honest, as the senior responsible officer, I had to make some decisions, speaking with members about the capacity that we had internally to develop a series of projects all at the same time. And we listened to the community and we were taking on board comments, and we knew that the community centre, the temporary community centre in particular, was a real priority for them. As members will be aware, we have brought that forward very quickly over the last year. So in terms of the enterprise zone, it's a very different offer to building community buildings. It is a large-scale commercial build, and it does need external expertise. That would always be the case. And one of the things that we're doing at the moment is we're working with external advisors to look at how best to bring forward that offer to the market. We don't want to preempt that by putting in a planning application and then finding that that isn't what the market is telling us they would build that, or indeed in terms of what they would like to occupy. So all that work is going on just to provide that reassurance. And again, as I say, very happy to look at the narrative and make sure that that is reflective of that work for members. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you for that, Anne. Councillor Heather Williams.
Thanks, Chair. Just that I think more substantial narrative is needed rather than just sort of like an excuse. We actually need to know the way it's working through. And I would say that I conclude that there is an overarching theme to this, is that we don't have the resources to do all these projects. So I would suggest that Cabinet reflect on that.
Okay, we'll move on. Councillor Sue Ellington.
Hello. Yes, I'm looking particularly on page 35, which is talking about green to our core, and identifies a number of tasks that are being completed in order to do that. But if my memory serves me correctly, we were looking at developing some recycling bins which could be provided in our villages, so that we could do more, instead of the current bins, which are not recyclable bins and just all go down in the black bin area. And we were talking about being able to deliver those recyclable bins if we were running fairs or fetes or village whatevers, in order to encourage our residents to recycle when they're out and about. And I see no mention of that going forward. And I wonder whether it had been snowballed or mothballed.
Okay, we'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance, but we have got Bode in the room.
Yeah, I'd defer to Bodie. Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Just to confirm that we actually already have this in place. So for fairs, for events, for community activities, the waste that's produced is classified as commercial waste. So it's not something that we can collect with the domestic stream. Commercial waste service, they offer a bin that's clean, it's separated, and they deposit it at events. People can hire that in advance, and then they take it away and make sure it gets recycled. And quite a lot of community groups, sporting events, parishes use that facility already. So we actually have this in place, and it's quite popular. We also have a leaflet that we make available to people that are planning events, encourage them to use recyclable, use reusable materials, and then also signposting them to the commercial waste collection services. So we have all these in place at the moment.
Councillor Sue Ellington.
It's just that I haven't seen them being used around my area, and my understanding was that we might be looking at the bins on the playing fields and parks and so on, in order to, again, to provide recycling opportunities for our residents.
I'll go back to Bode on that. Do you?
If it's okay, Chair, maybe I can take it offline directly with Councillor Wellington. Yeah, I think we may be cross purposes, but we do have facilities in place, but I can speak to her offline.
Okay.
Thank you very much. That'd be great. Thanks, Bud.
Thank you, Councillor Ellington. So it's me next. Mine were just two quick questions. The first one is on page 44. Let me just bring the question up. So this was in relation to blue bin waste. The amount of blue bin waste has increased, which is obviously a good thing. More people recycling when the black bin waste has at the same time reduced slightly. My question was around co-mingling, and with that final sort of raw product out of blue bin waste, are we finding that people are sorting as well with the increase in blue bins, or are we finding that there's more contamination with the increase? Happy to go to Bode for that.
Thank you, Chair. So the recycling facility we have has a threshold beyond which we then get penalized. That threshold is about 6% contamination. So far on the domestic waste stream, we have not exceeded that. So what we are finding is that people actually do put materials out quite cleanly. We also have quite a lot of social media posts that encourage people to rinse some of the materials. For instance, we're going to recycle yogurt pots, to rinse them out before putting them in the blue bin. So generally, we do have a good uptake, and we haven't exceeded the threshold when it comes to levels of contamination in the blue bin. We have a bit of a bigger challenge when it comes to trade waste because of restaurants and places like that, pubs. But in the domestic streams, our residents are quite helpful, and they're bringing out the materials in a relatively clean manner.
Thank you for that. My second question was on page 41 in relation to tenants' satisfaction with repairs. I just wondered if there is a breakdown of, because this performance figure falls slightly under, if there was a breakdown in where residents were unhappy with repairs. Was that in repairs to electric works or plumbing or gardening maintenance or so on and so on? Are there any trends within that we can see? So again, I'll come to through John Williams.
Yeah, we have Peter Campbell.
Peter Campbell.
I suspect so, but I'm not 100% certain. So can I go away and check the data and get back to you outside the meeting, please?
You can, Peter. Thanks for that. Councillor Judith Rippeth.
Thank you. Thank you for reminding me I need the microphone. On page 51, back to the mystery shopper, where we've got the information about the contacts made and at what times and days of the week. And since this is also, I understand, it was used because of the 4-day week to see how things were going with the contact centre, we have actually got an evening on a Wednesday evening, I think, operating until, is it 7:30 p.m? And there weren't any calls made after 5:30 p.m. I just wondered if that would have been useful to see how that was working from a more flexible point of view from the residents, being given that flexibility to call when maybe they're getting from work, which makes it easier if that could be considered if we do this a second time around, if we're still in the 4-day week and if we've still got a late evening. That's my first question.
Councillor John Williams.
I don't know if Jeff's got some figures on how many calls we're having in that memory.
I don't have the detailed figures. So far, the take-up is relatively light, but that's often the way when you're extending your services. It takes a little bit of time for people to get used to that. Yeah, it's a really good point, Councillor Rippeth. The mystery shopper exercise needs to be planned some months in advance. And actually, when we first went out and started doing the contract arrangements for this, it was before we were aware of the 4-day week. But yes, if we run this exercise again, or when we run this exercise again, we'll make absolutely certain that some of the calls are made in that additional time.
Okay, thank you. An extra sort of comment connected would be, would it maybe be possible to even run that evening slightly later, because it, would fall after people have got home, eaten their dinner, and then can make their calls. And I think that would be really useful if that was an observation from the mystery shopper. My other point was back on the council tax on page 38, and I note the comment where obviously you get a high volume of calls because the end of the financial year is coming up and the bills land on the doormat. And a lot of people had transferred to 12 months rather than paying over 10 months. I just kind of wondered if this coming year, next year, staffing could be sort of directed or slightly extra staffing in February, March, because with the cost of living crisis, the expectation is probably that lots of people will stick with spreading the cost over 12 months as opposed to into 10 months. Do you see what I'm driving at? So I'm maybe not being that clear, but if we could try and avoid that happening again.
Thank you, Chair. I think
Sorry, you meant to direct it to you.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Thank you. I think there are two things here. One is the number of calls to the call centre, and the number of calls to the call centre is always going to go up when people start getting their bills. And one of the reasons, quite rightly, is that given the cost of living situation, people are going to be asking, well, those that haven't already, some people are going to say, oh, I understand I can spread my bill over 12 months. So there's those calls, but the actual spreading of their bills over 12 means that we're collecting less money now at the beginning of the quarter than we would in the past. And I think that's one of the things I think we're going to be looking at, at the actual, what we should be targeting for now, given that we're starting to see quite a significant number of people change their payment arrangements so that they pay over 12 months instead of 10. Otherwise, we're always going to be in the red, I think, in the first month of the last quarter of the year. So there are two separate things there, but take your point about contact. I'm sure Jeff's got that in mind, that we've got in mind that we do get more calls in the last month of the last quarter of the year. And one of the ways we could overcome that is, of course, getting more people to go online and register for the, so that they deal with their council tax inquiry online rather than go through the call centre.
Yeah, thank you.
Councillor Rippeth.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, noted, and obviously that's the drive behind this, to try and limit the number of people who need to call, but still provide the service. But I suppose if there's any way of thinking about the staffing and also the staffing in the revenues department during that kind of crunch period, or whether that's something which I'm just trying to plan ahead and think of ideas. Thank you.
Councillor John Williams, do you want to follow up at all on that? No, thank you. Okay. Sorry, Councillor James Howbray.
Thank you, Chair. So I just had a question about so this is one of the KPIs on page 39 of the report, PN511. And so clearly there is quite a lot of detail written alongside the data here. And I've read it and I understand it. So this is a metric that is just touching the intervention point. And some explanations are given, and at the end, then something reassuring is said, which is once we've worked through the backlog, then we expect these numbers to come back towards the target level. So given all of that is understood, then I had a question about the way that this is presented, because it seems that the method of computing the metric has changed for the last 2 quarters. Because the comments made about that in the notes here. On the other hand, it looks as if the graph has been plotted with the old metric used up until Q3, and then the new metric used afterwards, which means that we can't really see the trends properly. And I wondered whether it would be better to present the older data computed under the newer metric, so we can actually see how the trends are. See what the trends look like under the new metric. Does that question make sense?
Councillor John Williams.
Yes, it does make sense. I don't know if someone would want to respond to this. Okay.
Yeah, feel free to do that.
Through the chair. So I think what I understand is that it's the 2-year metric. So it's still reporting on the same axis. It's not a change. It's just that the fact that there's basically, if you have a good performance in a previous 2-year period, it helps to smooth out, I suppose, the performance in that period of time. Now we've moved into a different period of time, and that's what's reflected in the graph. So I think it matches what it should match. It's just that it's quite complicated. I'm happy to take this separately and have a conversation with you if that helps.
So my basic question is really, are we still, does the graph presented to us here still show the real trends, or is it distorted by the change in the measurement metric? And if the answer is no, then could the way we plot this change so that it does show the real trends?
It does show the real trend. So that is the trend. It's just that it's impacted by, good performance in 21 or prior to 21. But so we were expecting it to be amber. It will now move into green. So, and as I said, I'm happy to take that separately and have a conversation with you to go through it in detail, if that helps.
Thank you. That would be helpful. Yes. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Martin Khan.
I really just wanted to comment on the mystery shopper, reinforce some points already made, which I think was very good, useful exercise. I was keen to see it and keen that it should be repeated. I also agree with the point that Councillor Heather Williams made regarding the impact on the staff. It is very stressful, but actually very helpful. Because the feedback helps you improve your service. As a context, a common, sort of similar sort of thing. I remember when I was a student, all the departments except one didn't have any monitoring of the lectures by the individual departments. One did it for every new lecturer. And while not all the lecturers were marvellous, they were all competent. And that wasn't true of all the departments. So it really does help. Having a monitoring of this does really help in terms of the service you come and that you learn lessons from it. And staff should be looking at it in that line. I'd also comment that I don't know how much, and it'd be interesting to know how much the social composition of the area that you're looking at will affect, or the people monitoring might affect how the service is pursued. Every time I get somebody sending me a thing to number from 1 to 10, how the service I've received, I immediately reject it because I hate it that everybody now asks me to do it. Maybe that's my social background, everything. But it's something that people respond differently, and it may not be evenly among different groups in the population. It may not be evenly among how it's monitored. So I think that's interesting. Nevertheless, the difference is dramatic here, and it really does comment well upon our authority. That's more than could be possibly explained by any such difference. But I think it is something that we do need to bear in mind, that it's may not just be measuring the response, it may also be measuring the area you're looking at. So in that sense, repeated comparisons between authorities will be very useful. It will show whether we're improving, and how we're responding in the same sort of context, a controlled situation. I think that would be interesting. Thank you very much. That's all.
Okay, Councillor John Williams, do you want to comment at all? No, okay. Okay, Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you, Chair. So 3 questions here, but they're all short. The first one is about on page 62, looking at A1 Roman 5, and this is that I think we've been confirmed recently that the CCTV policy, which was questioned by the taxi drivers, I think that judicial review has been found in our favour now. So I'm assuming that the amber is no longer amber, it's now purple. The second one is relates to page 69, C3, where we're retrofitting our commercial property, and it's relating to C3 Roman I, or Roman, I think that probably should be 6, but anyway, it's right at the bottom of the page. Oh, see, it's 3.1, that's right. And it's talking about the building management system is installed, but the connectivity to the ground source heat pump is still being built. And I wondered if we could just have an update on that and when that is expected to be connected, so we can see how much our lovely solar panels are generating. And the last one I have is on page 75. It's D51, and it relates to councillors being provided with increased access to Teams and Office, and it's regard to us not having papers in meetings. Now, I just observe that I have not actually found Modern Gov entirely helpful. I have found other methods of accessing papers online slightly helpful. But I called Aaron about that this afternoon and said, look, can I just check how many people are using Modern Gov and how many people are just downloading using Adobe Acrobat? And after a bit of discussion, he said, well, actually, Modern Gov is perhaps more flexible than you realise. And he said, actually, I've been thinking that we ought to do some training, offer more training to members so that they can be using the full flexibility of Modern Gov. So I just wondered if we could add in a thought that training offered to members to enable them to use Modern Gov more easily might be a good idea. But if I could have answers to the first 2, that would be helpful.
Okay, I'll come to Councillor John Williams in the first instance.
I don't feel has got an answer to the
Yeah.
Will it be Bode, please?
Yeah, Phil Bird. So,
I think you'll
Thank
find
you,
it's
Chair.
Bodaisan.
okay. Phil Bird is indicating to speak. Do you want to come in now, Phil?
I'm happy to, if that's okay with you, Chair
Yeah,
and Bode.
do that, and then we'll come over to Bode.
I have an update on the ground source heat pump. It was actually commissioned, which means it was approved and it's working as it should on the 2nd of June. We have 3 heat pumps and they are all working autonomously and in parallel with one another, so they're able to operate independently around heating and cooling. So they're working as per the design. There was a slight noise in one of the pump. We were not sure what it is, so rather than turn them on and hope that everything's working normally, we've got the subcontractor to undertake a further investigation to establish what that noise is. But as of, let's say, the 2nd of June, they have been commissioned and are working as they should. So there's just one final small hurdle to get over before we can turn it on completely.
Thank you for that. Bo, did you want to come in next? Yeah.
Yes, and thank you very much, Councillor Albadan, for spotting that error. I think the report was published when we were still in a period of potential appeal of the judicial review that found in favor of SCDC. So that appeal process, or that appeal period, I believe, has now passed. So this should be green.
Liz Watts, do you want to come in here?
Thank you, Chair. And just in response to Councillor Badnam's third point about the request for training, I think that's a great idea. I think modern ModGov is incredibly powerful as a tool in terms of being able to manage committee papers. And if members aren't kind of haven't yet experienced the functionality of ModGov, I think then we definitely need to get on and do some more training. So thank you for that suggestion.
Thank you. I should point out I have had some training in Modern Gov and I have used it, but I haven't found it easy to use. And indeed, in my conversation with Aaron Clark, he said, of course, it will never feel the same as working with papers, inevitably. He said, perhaps there's some functionality that you're not aware of. So I'm very happy to have that explained to me further. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Stobart.
Chair, thank you. So I've got some general questions, but I'm going to hang them on some of the items in the business plan. So first of all, page 63, and that's item A3 Roman 1. And this refers, and the following, the next item in the list also refers to meetings with businesses. And so I had 2 questions in relation to that, which is, to what extent do cabinet members get involved in interactions with business? And the aim appears to be to inform businesses of the grants and the support that South Cambridge District Council can offer. But what's the feedback? What's the take-up? And when we're talking about, for example, in A3 Roman 1, which is referring to the Green Grant Scheme, and I'm assuming that that is a Green Grant Scheme which would be applicable to small businesses, how do we measure that rate of take-up? I just want to add another comment, because the same comment could almost be applied to parish councils and their rate of take-up of having publicised, and there is this question of the preparedness of one side business and the other side parish councils to be able to bid. So are they ready, and does this liaison function actually help prepare respectively businesses and parish councils to be ready with their project ideas when finally the grant scheme is announced? So yeah, could I leave there those 2 questions? Interaction with business, what kind of feedback do we get? It touches on in a sense, the brand values of South Cambs in the business community, and then this degree of preparedness that's kind of prepared in that community, and also in amongst parish councils. How do we help them, basically, to be ready? Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Councillor John Williams has indicated that Anne Ainsworth can speak on this.
Thank you, Chair. So with regards to the feedback that we receive, I have to say we do receive extremely positive feedback, but I'm very happy to provide more detail. We get feedback through a range of ways from businesses, and we do collect that feedback. So if I could provide a written response to committee on that, we could provide a comprehensive answer, if that is okay with regards to that question, Chair.
It's okay with me. Is that okay with you, Councillor Stobart?
Yeah, just fine. It would be just nice to understand more, and then perhaps explore it later on. Could I ask a second question while I'm, as it were, online? So it's related to my my second point, which is, and I'll just supply a little. And I know we shouldn't be kind of be guided by anecdote, but when I was interacting with one of our parish councils about the electric vehicle charger scheme, so electric vehicle chargers are available through the excellent grant scheme. But in the discussion there was, well, we have a car park and we don't think we can lose too many spaces in that car park because it's always busy. And secondly, actually we haven't thought it through properly, and we think our EV charging point will get used by taxi firms. So all of that said, we're not ready with this to respond to this grant application. We haven't really thought it through. So I'm actually referring to page 71, item C5, Roman 2, which is a lot about zero carbon communities and the interactions, if you will, in the sustainability space with parish councils. So what's our experience, and are we missing something in the way we work with parish councils? How could we make parish councils better prepared to receive this news, if you will, to have a list of projects which they're preparing? And how could members contribute to that efficient process of the parish council interaction with the grant and information schemes? Thank you, Chair.
Councillor John Williams in the first instance.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I mean, we're not experts in the installation of, EV charging points. What we can do and what we do, because I know the officer concerned does do this because it comes to the grants committee, is that we give advice. And we try to signpost people and get them in touch with people that can help design something for their, because basically every community hall is different, and it's not just physically, but in the way it's used and the sort of demand that there could be around it. But we're not the actual experts. We can't go in and do the sort of the mathematics for them. We can't actually say, this is the sort of thing you should install and you're going to get this sort of return on it. We have to rely on putting the parish councils, if they're interested, putting the parish councils in touch with someone who can do that. And then it's down to the parish council then to make that decision itself as to whether to go ahead or not. And some parishes have decided that it's too risky, or they don't believe they've got a good enough, strong enough return. And other parish councils have decided, yes, they will go into partnership with a particular supplier. So it's really difficult to say that we can give the sort of level of support that I think you're asking for. I think what we can do is, we can provide a grant if parish council wants to pursue an EV charging point in their community, and we can put them in touch with people we think that will be able to help them. But at the end of the day, we can't offer that advice. We don't have it in-house.
Councillor Stobart, do you want to come back on?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, thank you for the reply. This wasn't really so much about expertise as about the time, if you will, the kind of gestation period of a project. So a community requires time to digest the idea and to wrestle with, how do we respond? And parish councils take some time to do this. So it was really, and I appreciate Councillor Williams' comments. I think it's both the time and the availability, and this might be officer time. So as a grant is emerging as a possibility, and I think zero carbon communities is great from this point of view because that interaction does take place. But as a general rule, to have that lead time to give the parish councils or whoever's going to bid for the grant, just time to kind of mull it over, internalise it in the community, take some views and then react. So I think it's preparedness, warning and officer availability would really help.
Councillor Bill Handley.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that parish councils were made aware of this through the parish council regular reports that they get. And they'd have been given a contact email for more information. I will check after the meeting that was done, but that's the normal way that parish councils are notified of such things.
Councillor Stobart.
I appreciate the comments that are being made. I don't want to press this any further, but simply to just reinforce that point, that sometimes the deadlines are quite short, parish councils may not be prepared, and we would need to, perhaps to give a little extra time and support to make things happen. And just as a footnote, and I won't take it any further, it would be nice to know what the response rate from parish council were and were there hotspots, where their parish councils are particularly adept and others that were particularly sluggish, and it may be down to personalities, but it would be nice to know.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Bradnam, did you want to just come in there at all?
Thank you, Chair. My recollection is that parish councils were given an early warning of the Zero Carbon Communities grant, because I remember saying to my parishes, this is going to become available soon. Look at the website, which gives you a lot of guidance about how the sorts of things you might be looking for. And I'm sure other councillors in my own ward and others have done exactly the same. And warned people this was coming up. So I don't recall it being a sort of suddenly landing and everybody having to decide at the drop of a hat. I think they were advised. Certainly, that's my recollection.
Okay, thank you for that point of information. So we'll move on to Councillor Sue Ellington.
I think the moment has passed. Sorry, I put my hand up and was going to re-comment, but it's gone by.
Thank you very much, Councillor Ellington. Councillor Stephen Drew.
Thank you, Councillor Cone. Can I first reference to page 74, and it's in Appendix B, and it's D3. I noticed that we are purple on having achieved the target of at least 25% of our taxation and central government grants, that our investments in commercial activity will deliver at least 25% of our taxation and central government grant income by 2023-24. I note and recall a number of times in different meetings, Councillor John Williams and others involved in investment strategy and finance, talking about how difficult it has become in recent years to achieve really successful outcomes from investments. And I just wondered if Councillor Williams could just give us a brief kind of explanation of how the council has managed to achieve this, what strikes me as a really great success, despite the fact that we're in difficult times and there are great challenges in play.
Councillor John Williams.
Can I first say, I think you know that the business rates have changed and the way they're calculated changed. So we've actually got more business rates coming in than we'd assumed for the coming year. So it's actually going to be quite difficult to match that 25% going forward, because actually the income we're getting from business rates has gone up. how long it's going to last, because obviously we've got people who are appealing against that, which is why we set aside quite some £8 million against those appeals. We'll wait to see. But certainly for the year that's gone, we did achieve that 25%. And it has been difficult because, as you know, the government changed the rules regarding a loan from the Public Works Loan Board, which has limited what we can do in terms of investment purely for yield, and now we are limited in what we can invest to regeneration or social or the provision of social facilities. Nevertheless, having said that, we do have a number, it wasn't retrospective, fortunately, so we have got those investments that we took out before that change happened, and those investments have been very good for us. And we have also added value to those investments by doing certain things like putting in, PVs and things like that, so that we can charge more in rent. So we have been very canny in our investment, and it is rather annoying that having taken so much care in ensuring that not only have we got the right physical investment, i.e. the block and stuff, making sure it's not falling down, etc., and requires a lot of maintenance, but also we've got the right tenant there to deliver us the return that we're looking for, high return. And in this area, we're very fortunate with life sciences that we can get a very good return from our tenants. It is annoying that we've been lumbered with the people who haven't done that, who have been very reckless. I think of Woking, for example, where it's landed itself with a £1.5 billion in debt, and Thurrock and other councils where they haven't been so, they haven't been so careful with the way that they've invested, and it's a shame that we're being penalised as a result of that. But nevertheless, I think give credit to our finance team and to Anne and the way that we have managed our investment portfolio is such that yes, we are delivering that target so far. But as I say, there are other, to be 25% of all the taxation and grants that come in. Obviously, we have no control over the taxation and grants that other people give us or come in. So, we can strive to make sure that our income from investments is 25% of that cake. But, for example, if we suddenly have a big increase in income from business rates, we can't suddenly change our income from other sources to maintain that 25%.
Great, thank you. Thank you for that, and as you say, well done to everyone involved. That's a really, really good news story for everyone who lives in South Cambs. I can just draw your attention to the next page, 75.D4, so the first part, where it says we are green, on track to make a further 12 services available for customers to self-serve online. I always read these things in a really positive way, and it's absolutely great, but I always just like to hear those involved say that residents who either don't wish to use the online services or who find using the online services extremely complicated, I just always like to hear a recommitment of the council to providing the, shall we say, the old-fashioned non-online services for those of our residents who do not wish to use the online. So I just wanted to give you the opportunity to recommit to that, Councillor Williams.
Of course. Can I bring Jeff in?
Of course.
Because, we are not going 100% AI in this council. We recognise that, that there are people, that we have residents who have difficulty with the digital world, and we must ensure that we meet their needs as well as everyone else's. Thank you, Jeff.
Yes, through you, Chair. Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're trying to illustrate is the fact that we've got a commitment to ensure that not only do we maintain the other ways that people can access services, particularly through our contact centre, but we're looking to improve them. One of the things that we're really trying to focus on with our contact centre is to ensure that when somebody contacts us in the future, we're going to have a fully operational CRM. We're in the process of developing that, so that when they speak to somebody in that contact centre, they'll know not only what's happening around the inquiry that the person's asking about at that moment in time, but what other inquiries they've made, if there are any other outstanding issues, so they can provide a holistic service to that customer. Also, the self-serve options that we're providing for our customers to use can also be used by our customer contact staff. So it means that they don't have to be an expert in all our back office systems. If somebody contacts them because they want some help with, say, claiming benefit or doing something on their council tax, rather than just taking a note and referring it to the back office, our contact centre staff will be able to use those self-serve options on behalf of the customer and actually undertake that process for them, meaning that they're going to get instant results rather than having to wait. So yes, I think we're very happy to confirm that we're committed to improving the other ways of accessing our services. But we do want a good quality digital service for those people that want to operate that way, particularly for those people that want to access services out of hours. So self-serve allows people to access things 24/7. A comment's been made already about the fact that we've extended telephone hours, and I think I'm pleased to let members know that within the next month, we'll be trialling web chat for the first time for the council. We're going to start small, test it out, and develop that as we go. But again, that just gives people another option for ways of contacting us. What we're trying to do is ensure that our telephone lines are free for those people that want to contact us that way, because other people that want to contact us online have had the opportunity to do that, freeing up the telephone channel.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Okay. So if we go back to page 31, which is the covering document there, I think we have met the recommendations to review the KPI results, make comments, and they have been noted by the members of the Cabinet that are present. Is the committee happy with that? Agreed? Agreed. Lovely. So we will move on to item 8, which is the draft annual equality scheme review, pages 79 to 112. Have we got anyone that wants to speak on that? Toomey Hawkins. Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Good evening, Chair. Basically, the paperwork's got my name on it, so I just thought I'd say a few words, if that's all right with you. Please do. I mean, obviously, this is the Equality Scheme report that we publish annually, and the one that's before you today is for the year 2023 to 24. Just to say, as a modern and caring council, equality, diversity, and inclusion is quite important to us. And the list you have here shows the list of actions we propose to implement in the coming year to establish this within the council and hopefully within the wider district too. Just to say, we've started to collect some very useful statistics, which I think you might find interesting, and I think Councillor Bradnam made a reference to one of those before. This is the equality profile headlines. One of the documents is for the national context, and the other one is for the South Cambs context, which shows the diversity of the population. For example, the pockets of high fertility that was referred to before. That used to be Camborne, I think, years ago. And the fact that we've got something that says the residents aged 65 plus will potentially become 22% by 2031, rising from 16% in 2011. which means 1 in 5 people in South Cambs will be over 65 years of age by 2031, which is sobering, actually. But anyway, I know we've had nearly 2 hours already, so I won't say too much other than Appendix A contains the actions we're hoping to take in 2023-24, and Appendix B is what we've done so far with the RAG ratings, and a lot of it is positive. So we know we don't know everything, so we're hoping to get some feedback from you as to your views before this goes to Cabinet for approval. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins, for that introduction. It's very helpful. I will now open it up to members who would like to speak on this. Okay, so we've got Councillor Heather Williams.
I think just on some things that would maybe help make it clearer when it comes forward to Cabinet. If I look at pages, really page 101, which is, I appreciate the national context, but I'm making the assumption we've chosen those stats and put it together. It says about, in the top left, 1 in 5 LGBT staff have been the target of negative comments. When I originally read it, I sort of missed it. I thought it meant staff of the council. And then I thought to myself, well, oh, please tell me that's not true. And then I sort of looked more. So I'm just saying, when we're using terms like staff, it might help to really clarify where we're at, and there might be something more that could be done there. There are some comparisons between the South Cambridgeshire and the national. I just wonder if there's room to get some more comparables, particularly thinking of things like age or the fertility. It might be helpful to sort of see that reflected on the national, so we can see where we're setting. There are going to be some bits extra that we want to look at, obviously, for our area, but it did feel like there wasn't many comparables, so I sort of wondered why the national bit was there, because it wasn't giving much to compare from. Thank you, Chair.
Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
This is the first time we're doing this. So, yes, I think we picked stuff that we thought would be of interest to highlight some things specifically within South Cambs. But yes, we can refine that as we go along. Thank you.
Councillor Heather Williams, would you like to come back on that at all?
No, that's all, and please do make sure there's great clarification around staff.
Lovely, thanks very much. Councillor Judith Rippeth.
Yeah, thank you, and thank you. I think it's a really useful document, and I'm really pleased to see something also with the national context for the first time, with kind of more detail than I've ever seen here before. There's one thing which was like a typo, but it was just, we're referring still to warm hubs, but we changed that to community wellbeing hubs. That's on page 88. So to get that sort of language corrected. And I think the national context is really useful. Again, I mean, this is really disturbing about the number of hate crimes against transgender people, which is obviously a national stat here, up 26%. And I'm just hoping desperately that I don't know how this can be measured or monitored like locally, but that those figures aren't as bad as high as that. But have we got that kind of covered? It felt like a lot of the other diversity points were kind of more covered with more actions. I just really opening that up to see how what kind of research has been gone into that on the council basis.
Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you. I'm not sure how we can get that specifically within South Cambs, but it's something that we can have a look at. Actually, I've also got Phil Bird, who is online, who might be able to add some of this, because he's been part of putting all this together.
Yeah, Phil Bird.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chimi. Yes, I mean, as you can see at the bottom of the page, it does give us some indication of where we got the statistics from. And it was certainly, as Councillor Hawkins said, this is just a first attempt. What we're really trying to show here is not that just what the data is, but that we're actually starting to collect this sort of data and start to analyse it, which is something, as you've already alluded to, that we've not done previously. So any feedback and comments around the type of data you want to see and the style of data you want to see will be taken on board. There are more places we can gather this information from, and we can delve deeper into the areas that we're already looking at, i.e. Stonewall and the Home Office reports, etc. So more than happy to take aboard any comments and try and get this to a place where how it pleases everybody, basically.
Yeah, thank you for your answers.
Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you. What I observe, and I'm sure Phil Bird and the team are very well aware of it, is that there's quite a lot of this data is, or some of this data is available through Cambridgeshire Insight as well, isn't it? And, you know, I would have thought that would be a good place to gain some extra data from. I felt certainly on this, obviously the things that concern us are on the South Cambridgeshire page, and I thought actually the team had done a good comparison with national data in most of these cases, and certainly, you know, bottom right, male residents in full-time work. You know, it was a comparison with the national data as well. So I think, you know, the team have done a good job of trying to show us in the context of the national data. And I think the data, if you wanted a comparison in Cambridgeshire, because it comes largely from police data for things like stop and search, that we would have that data for Cambridgeshire, not just national. So you could do a Cambridgeshire comparison. But thank you. I think it's an excellent report, and that's my comment.
Thank you for that, Councillor Bradnam. Councillor Dr. Chumi Hawkins, do you want to comment on that at all?
No, you know, we'll take that away, and hopefully by the time you see this report again, it will be a lot more interesting with more data than we see at the moment.
I think also the reason, if I may, sorry, Chair, through you.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the other reason for putting the comparison is we need, it's valuable to see it in context, because otherwise it can look misleading. You know, if we can see that we've got so many of something, but actually that's the same as every other county in the country, we can see we're doing no worse than anybody else. But if we've got a stat that's higher or lower, then we can see that there's an area that we might need to put some attention into. So, thank you.
Thank you for that. Councillor Richard Stobart.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'm just going to endorse a few points. I think the infographics are great. It's a very clear way of presenting data, and then regional, national, and if we could see perhaps more of that as there are more dimensions to the data appear, that would be helpful. Against objective 1, to understand the diversity that exists within South Cambridgeshire, is this more than just a kind of data point, but there's also a trend, and you know, the trend could be taking us in different directions. We did talk about the trend in regard to the over 65s, but there will be other trends that are perceived from data. So I just suggest that as another aspect of the data that we might look at. And there's a series of, if you will, partnerships and access to other data, but there may be others, and I wonder if the team responsible could keep a watching brief for other sources of data. I mean, they're many and diverse, and you know, you can take data from social media, you can take data from studies, and those studies might be national in scope or regional in scope. But that would be a kind of watching brief to look at emerging sources of data. So they're just a few suggestions. One of the things that might be part of the project is that perception or perhaps an understanding where South Cam sits in terms of its preparedness to handle this data. You know, is it in the top 25% of districts that are looking at this kind of data? You know, how do you make that comparison then adopt best practice? So there are just a few suggestions, Chair.
Thank you for that. Councillor Dr. Jimmy Hawkins, do you want to comment on that at all?
Yeah, it definitely will, you know, we'd love to be able to say South Cambs is within, I don't know, the top 10 for doing something really good. But it's trying to get so much data. We need to decide if you can be a bit more specific as to this, you know, like for the trends, for example, you know, we started off with the 65s, over 65s, because we kind of know we have an aging population, right? You know, but it's actually useful to see some real figures. So it's not just, as we say, anecdotal, right? We want to know under 18s, under 24s, you know, if there's any specific group or trends that you think would be useful for us to look at, then fine. You know, let us know what those are, and you know, we can have a chat within the team and see where we can get them from and how we can do the comparisons. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Richard Stobart, did you want to come back on that at all?
Well, through you, Chair, thanks for the response.
Yeah. Thanks very much. Councillor Stephen Drew.
Yeah, thank you. Really strong report, as you referred to, Councillor Hawkins. Just to pick up a few things and just maybe ask what the sort of council's position is on it in relation to things that maybe might be seen as being outside of our remit, but obviously we're choosing to flag it up quite rightly. But I'm just wondering what you think the council should be doing to deal with this. So, for instance, on page 99, where we have the first of the infographics, it's the bottom left, related to stop and search. It already looks like a very poor performance and a very worrying figure when we are saying that black residents of Cambridgeshire are 10 times more likely to face stop and search than white residents. But actually, that, interestingly, is even worse than the national figure. So the national figure, according to the Office of National Statistics, shows that black people in the UK are 7 times more likely to face stop and search. And in Cambridgeshire, we see that they are 10 times more likely to face stop and search. So an already really bad picture actually apparently is even worse in Cambridgeshire. So I'm just wondering from the perspective of the District Council what you feel that we as councillors or you as administration can be doing in relation to work that the police in Cambridgeshire are engaging in to deal with what is clearly a very concerning figure.
Councillor Jimmy Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. That is a figure that concerns me, and declaration of interest, I'm one of that group. And as a council, put it this way, as an individual, it's one of those things that you talk to your children about, is you be careful, don't get involved with the police. Now, as a councillor, actually, I was sent a report recently about somebody who experienced racial discrimination. And I go, bah, it's expected. But it's not something I think that we as individuals or as a council can do other than to talk to the police within the partnership and say, look, this is what the stats are saying. This is what our residents are saying. Can you make sure that your officers are aware of that behavior and stop doing it? Right. That is all we can do. But hopefully it might improve, but seeing stats like this, certainly we should be sharing with them because it's their role that's causing this.
Thank you. Second question, on the same infographic, I'm wondering whether or not this, I may be completely incorrect, but the infographic related to the gender pay gap refers to male residents in South Cambridgeshire earning on average £4.03 more per hour than female residents, compared with a £1.22 per hour difference nationally. I'm just wondering if the District Council has any sense of why that might be the case, that our figures within South Cambs, again, are even worse on a figure that we already know nationally is problematic. I have a thought in my head as to why it might be, but I wondered if you had any thoughts about how the District Council could be involved in that and why it might be happening.
Councillor Julie Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. No, I don't necessarily know why it might be happening. I wonder if Phil Bird might have a bit more detail on that.
Thank you, Councillor Hawkins and Chair. No, I have no idea why that is the case. All we've done is collect the statistics, unfortunately. If there is a piece of work that we can undertake to try and establish that, we'd be happy to do so. But at this stage, all we've done is collect the data without really analysing it so far. So I'm sorry, I can't answer that question.
No, that's fine. I raised it in part because I'm always struck by the fact that we quite rightly talk very positively about the economic benefits of being in South Cambridgeshire, and Councillor Williams referred earlier to how that feeds through to being able to perhaps charge higher rents or such like. But there's clearly an issue. I believe you wanted Councillor Stobart to come in.
Yeah, Councillor Stobart.
Sorry to come in very late, but I was just thinking about generational diversity, as it were.
Okay.
Because you know, our recent history has been marked by very different generational sort of behaviours and influences. You know, and even down to what we might call the COVID generation, those who've had their education really seriously affected by the by the whole COVID situation. But am I right in thinking that this would fit in the general equality frame? And particularly, you know, there's if we're thinking of mental illness amongst teens, you know, that has been a very dynamic kind of situation and influences all kinds of social policy as well. So does that fit in this frame, or is it for some other consideration?
Thank you for that, Councillor Stobart. I will also bring in Councillor Heather Williams, and then I'll come back to Councillor Drew, and then back to the Cabinet member.
It was just in relation to the male residents in full-time work earning more than female residents. Just something to bear in mind, there was a study recently, and forgive me, I can't think of it off the top of my head, but basically said where you have areas that are more affluent, which I think we all agree South Cambridgeshire is, and you have higher earning powers, it's more likely for households to go to sort of one dominant worker household. That doesn't mean that the other person wouldn't have a job, therefore some work, but that there was it was more likely to have a one parent working household because the income is higher to support that. And we do know that predominantly in that situation it is more likely for women to stay at home than men. Not always the case, but it can be. So it might be worth just ensuring that we understand fully how those figures have been brought together, whether they've just looked at working age for women, of which case there's, because you normally find in more deprived areas there's more necessity for two parents to work. So that could reflect in the figures slightly.
Thank you.
Not to mention the nature of the industries here as well.
Thank you for both of those points. I'll come back to Councillor Drew.
Yeah, fine, thank you. My third one, which again, which maybe, in my way, may be very simple, but may prove not to be. I can reference you to page 108, Councillor Hawkins, where it is really referring to recruitment. And obviously we are aware that issues related to diversity of staffing groups and the issue of ensuring that that the council is employing the most diverse workforce for all the benefits that we know come from that, of having the best people. I'm just wondering within this if there is any specific HR policy or actions that are being taken by the council in order to deliver that. To give you an example, I'm aware that some employers, in order to avoid unconscious bias within their recruitment, will ensure that the people making decisions on who is interviewing have no information regarding the name or the age or the gender or the nationality or ethnicity of the person, so they just make the decision based on the information in front of them. I know it's something where I have done that in my professional life in order to avoid unconscious bias. So I just wonder if there is anything the council is specifically doing at this stage to fulfil these targets from that perspective.
Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. On that last point, I don't know, but perhaps our chief exec might, will be able to say something on that.
Jeff Membry.
Liz is
oh, sorry, Liz, you come in first. Yeah, Jeff Membry.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, indeed, Councillor Drew. The people selecting people for interview don't get to see the age, the ethnicity of the person. Sometimes, if people include a CV, they can possibly work out the age. But we do everything that we can to ensure that. And we do train our managers when we do recruitment on ensuring that they don't have unconscious bias and that they're selecting purely on grounds of merit.
Great, thank you very much. I'm happy for it to move on at this stage.
I'll just come back to Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Just to pick up on the 2 points made by Councillor Stobart and Councillor Williams. Thank you for that. Definitely, we will have a more in-depth look as to what the reasons might be for those discrepancies. And obviously, the points you've mentioned will be part of what we look at. So thank you.
Thank you for that. Okay, so we've got Councillor Helen Lehman next.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually really interested in Appendix B, sort of seeing how these stats might form targets or embed themselves into our policies. But actually, my point on this report is actually slightly tangential. I was looking at the information on page 109, talking about the disability assessment of our offices, and that at the moment we haven't been able to complete that because of the greening of South Cams Hall work and all the building work that's been undertaken. I just wanted to check that although we hadn't been able to do this formal disability assessment, I just wanted to make sure that we had put adequate interim arrangements in place and there had been some adequate things put in place to ensure that we were meeting our disability compliance responsibilities.
Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Yes, we have. We've rolled that into the action plan for 23-24, so we'll be doing that. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks.
Is that okay, Councillor?
Yes, that's perfect. Thank you.
Lovely. I think I'm next.
It's you next.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, so page 111, it's just a quick point. Firstly, I would like to also say that I think the report's a very good one. It's easy to understand. It's got a lot of detail in it, and I like the graphics and things that we get. I think it's really good. Third row down, where we've got, we're talking about the Gypsy and Traveller accommodation needs assessment. I'm pleased to see that this is now in progress. But really, I just wanted the Cabinet member to comment on whether she thinks we're doing enough, like fast enough, given some of the statistics in the background around that group being, particularly discriminated against in many areas and at a disadvantage. Are we doing enough fast enough to make sure that we are accommodating that group? And I know that is not an easy thing, and the council is working towards it, but if you could just comment on that, that would be helpful. Councillor Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. We definitely are aware of the issues with the Gypsy and Traveller community, and I can assure you that we're doing the very best that we can. It's not easy, the expertise in that is something that we have to get. Those of you who are on the planning committee know about Smithy Fen and how long it's taken to get to where we are now. But we definitely are aware of the requirements, and we're doing our best to make sure that we provide for them, especially looking at it also in terms of the emerging local plan.
Lovely, thank you for that. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you. I was just ruminating on the numbers that we were looking at earlier on, the business of the males earning more than females compared with the difference nationally. And it was just a word of warning. We've all been suggesting you could get data from X, Y, and Z. And I just thought this would be a wonderful exercise for more or less on Radio 4, because I just think we need to be careful that we are actually using comparable data. You know, because it's all very well saying, well, in South Cambs we've got this and nationally it's that. And I know that the sources have been referenced, but we're looking at different parameters in the South Cambs version and the national context. And it's just, I'm sure everybody will have thought of this, but it's just to make sure that we are actually using data that has been calculated from the same base data when we're comparing across the two, from South Cambs to national.
Thank you. Councillor Dr. Chumi Hawkins.
We will definitely make sure that we're comparing apples and apples, not apples and oranges. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we've got Councillor Sue Ellington.
Thank you. I'm looking at page 101, and under hate crimes, it talks about a rise of 26% from 2021. I am always very skeptical about percentage rises. If my maths is correct, and I know there are people there who probably have got better at maths than I have, but if there were 4 people who had hate crime in 2001 and there's 5 people now, I believe that would be a 26% or 25% increase. And I think we need to have figures, not percentages. They are really, really deceptive in providing information, in my view.
Councillor Chumi Hawkins.
Noted, Chair.
Thank you very much. Councillor Sue Ellington, did you want to come back on that at all?
Thanks to me.
Thank you. So we now have Councillor Judith Rippeth.
Thank you for letting me come back a second time. Talking about sort of context of figures, I liked on page 99, it's been referenced already, about the high fertility in Milton and Waterbeach. I mean, that could be a good thing. Especially if we've got a lot of older people we need to care for later, and that provides, you know, funding in the future for that section of the population. It's actually a national issue as well with the ageing population, and we don't know exactly where that all lies. And Milton and Waterbeach has had and will have in the near future quite a few, you know, younger people moving into the area, and that makes perfect sense. And yeah, it's quite, you know, I know it's bigger, and that's nothing to do with the comparison, but I think somebody said Cambourne used to hold that title, but Newtown, young people, and I just wanted to point out that may in fact be more positive than people think.
Yeah, I felt that when reading the report as well, but Councillor Chumi Hawkins.
Yeah, it's one of those things that, you know, will change over time as the new towns start coming on board, really, and expected as younger people move in. In fact, I spoke to somebody in Caldicott today who said we moved here because we wanted to bring up a family. So.
Yeah. Indeed, I think that's a real positive if people want to be there and the facilities there, and you know, and I welcome it.
Okay, so I think that's all the speakers that I have. So if we go back to page 79 and look at the recommendations at point 3, I think we have covered that in that we've made comments and reviewed the documents that are in front of us on that agenda item, and thank you Councillor Jimmy Hawkins for coming to introduce that as well. Are we all happy as a committee that we have done that? Agreed? So we'll move on to item 9, the work programme, which starts at page 113 to 128. So I was just going to say that Councillor Stephen Drew, Ian Senior and myself are having meetings regarding the work programme, and members know that they can bring things to any of us to bring forward, or things that they would like to come up on that work programme. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to add or bring up at all at this stage? Okay. So I will move on then to item 10, which is the date of the next meeting. Ian, the date of the next meeting is? The 7th of September. So if you just note that, and it is at the slightly later time as it was today at 5:30. So thank you all for attending the meeting, and I will now close the meeting.